Welcome to Theological Grazing. Well, I'm still getting the hang of using a new phone while I drive and record, but I think it's all working okay. And so I'm just going to expect that it is. So welcome back. It's been a little bit since I've recorded these, actually. You probably can't tell that, although there's probably been weeks at a time when I don't post anything to this feed. That's not my intent. My intent is to have a weekly podcast coming out, but it is something that's quick to go. I've been traveling lately with a new baby in our house. It's just a little bit more difficult to be consistent with this particular podcast. But I do intend to try to be. I have a lot of ideas that I want to think through and talk about, but I just haven't always had the chance to then record these and edit them and then post them. Mostly it's the editing and posting. I have plenty of time to record because it's literally just when I drive in between places. So I just left a coffee shop and I'm heading over to the church now. And so I have a minute and thought I would share. Before I do, I'm going to try to shout these guys out once in a while. It'll be in the podcast notes on whatever app you're using too. But I just want to shout out the Society of Reformed Podcasters. I believe that this podcast is going to get added to their feed. These are guys who, the Restless podcast that Matt Klein and I do. We've been a part of this for a while and are, very happy to be a part of what they're doing. It's a bunch of different Reformed podcasts that kind of come together. You can find more of their stuff at reformedpodcast.com. You can search for just the Society of Reformed Podcasts and you'll find kind of the mega feed, they call it, where it's just all of the shows that they do. I personally listen to the Reformed Brotherhood basically every week, and for me it's just a helpful kind of recap of some systematic theology, and it's helpful for me just to keep those categories in mind throughout my days. And I don't have as much time to read up on theology as I might like sometimes, and so it's just a helpful way for me to keep that in mind. So shout out to the guys at the Reformed Brotherhood, and definitely check them out. Today, I thought I would talk about a line that I've started to use once in a while that I think is true, and I think it kind of points out the need for the community that we have in the church and the fellowship that we have in the church. This is the idea that you can't smell your own BO. You can't smell your own BO. Now, that's maybe not always true. Maybe some people can. But for the most part, people don't realize how stinky they are. You know what I'm talking about, too. I think pretty much everybody has met someone who says, oh, I don't use deodorant. I don't need it. And as soon as I say that, you know who this person is, and you know for a fact they really could use some deodorant. Right? But there are people who think, well, I don't smell. And maybe that's true sometimes. I'm not going to sit here and say that I can judge everyone. But I can say from my experience, the vast majority of people that say I don't smell are people that absolutely do smell. It is not true that they don't smell. Now, maybe they don't mind smelling, right? They don't mind that people smell them, and that's, something maybe that's a topic for another time, why it is courteous to cover up some of your stink. But either way, the very fact of the matter is you often cannot smell your own BO. This is one of the reasons why we need other people, right? This is part of the role of the church, of the community and the fellowship of saints, is that there are going to be other people that can smell your BO. Right? There's going to be other people that can tell when you are in sin, even times when you don't think that you're in sin. And I want to really encourage that you just live into that. Don't be afraid if people say, man, you stink. You know, don't be afraid if there are people in your church who will point things out to you that are not really becoming of a Christian. That's a good thing. Now, of course, it can be abused. Of course, it can be used to manipulate you. But I think the vast majority of the time, most folks are just there by God's providence to help us understand what our real needs are. They're around by God's grace to sharpen us, right? As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. This is not a friction-free process. How is it, do you think, iron sharpens iron? Well, it's not without friction, without heat, without sparks. Right? It's a difficult process. It can maybe hurt a little bit. And what it really does, I mean, it's shaving pieces of metal off, right? It's sharpening by getting rid of, by taking away, by forming. Well, this is what God does for us through the church. As the Holy Spirit is at work in you, so the Holy Spirit is at work in others, sanctifying others, but also sanctifying you by means of others. God uses other believers to sanctify us. And so I want you to be encouraged that even when it's discouraging, when others tell you all the things you're doing wrong, when they critique you, maybe they could do it in a nicer way. Maybe they could be more kind and loving when they do it. But don't just run away from that. Don't just hide when others point out some of your faults. Rather, live into that a little bit, right? This is God's means, one of God's means of making you more like Christ. And if it's one of God's means of doing that, you don't want to run away from it, right? It would not be of any benefit to you to hide from that. You can't smell your own BO, but this is why God has given us each other. Well, that's all, folks. If you could help me out, rate and review this podcast, share it with a friend, go ahead and email me if you have any questions. We're out.